The first part of this video was shot in the Concord West playground next to Bicentennial Park. It showcases some concepts that could be applied to the design for the community and play and fitness space at Charles Heath Reserve next to the Five Dock Leisure Centre. The Concord West playground features a kids' bicycle training area, and this was getting plenty of use on the day this video was shot. As far as I know, this is the only place where kids can safely learn how to stop at intersections or right on the left, etc. in the entire Canada Bay area. I might be wrong, and I'm willing to be corrected. But I suggest something like this should be considered within Area 7 of the master plan, in the middle of the grassed area. I draw your attention to this interesting article on public spaces entitled, "The key to a great public space? It's in the edges." I quote from the article, "One of these truths is that humans exhibit the biological princess of vigmataxis." I don't know if I can pronounce that properly, but it's a preference for hugging the edges of a space instead of lingering out in the exposed centre. And this is what Area 7 is, an exposed grassy area. The grassy area may turn out to be a waste of space, as it is, because people just won't go into it unless there is something there. It might get used for kicking a ball around or walking a dog, but that's about it. Let's make better use of it by putting a usable feature in the middle of it, i.e. the kids' training area. If we go back to Concord West, let's have a look at the shared path that goes north towards Rhodes. When the weather is nice, as you can see here, this path gets used by a lot of pedestrians and cyclists, and on Saturday mornings it's usually absolutely overrun with runners. Why is this so? Well, it's wide, it's in good condition, and most of all it's safe. I mean, it might be surrounded by mosquitoes and all that kind of other horrible stuff, but that really doesn't matter. What people like is it's smooth and it's safe. There are no roads to cross. The nearest cars are on the other side of those trees on Homebush Bay Drive. You can hear them, but you can't see them, and they're certainly not going to be able to get across there to run you over. Clearly, there is plenty of appetite for this kind of facility. Unfortunately, the existing master plan seems to be obsessed with car parking, implying that the only way parents will bring their children to the leisure centre is by driving. Little thought appears to have been put into how families who live close by can walk, scooter, skateboard or cycle to the park. I mean, if you live 150 or 200 metres away, who in their right mind is going to get in the car and drive? In fact, if you live 400 metres away, who's going to get in the car and drive? I mean, that sort of distance is easily walkable even by young children, and it's certainly very easy to scooter or cycle that distance. Connectivity by anything other than a car to the surrounding residential areas is largely missing. As this quote says, if you plan cities for cars and traffic, you get cars and traffic. If you plan for people and places, you get people and places. This master plan is supposed to be about outside activity and fitness, but it misses the idea that travelling to the leisure centre can also include outside activity and fitness. The journey can be more than just a boring, sedentary trip for kids in a glass and metal box, struggling through congestion there and back. The journey both ways can actually be physical activity as well. In fact, the journey could possibly be more fun than actually the destination. One problem with playgrounds is that kids can get bored after a while with just playing on the equipment. It's good to be able to provide them with a mix of alternatives, such as being able to play on the equipment for a while, then riding their bike around, maybe kicking a footy, then going back to the swings and slides. Even better is something like the Bay Run, where there are multiple playgrounds located around the loop. When our kids were younger, it used to take over 3 hours on a weekend to ride around the bay, because we'd stop at every playground for half an hour or so, and that seemed to be about as much as the kids wanted to do at any one playground with the equipment that it contained. Being able to easily travel from one playground to another is great. It provides a lot more variety, because it's very rare to find a playground large enough to offer a full range of equipment and activities for all ages. In fact, the only place I've ever found in Australia that's got that is the Sticky Beaks playground in Kings Park in Perth, and that's a hell of a long way from Canada Bay. But that was funded by millions of dollars of mining money, so it's got a lot of stuff. This is especially important when you have kids a few years apart, and the equipment in one playground is suitable for the age of one child but not the others. Being able to roam around like nomads from one playground to the next gives everyone a fair go on equipment suitable to their age. Which brings me back to parking. Once you've driven to a playground, no parent will ever pack the kids back into the car and drive to the next playground. It's just too hard. But it's not hard if the entire family can get around by bike. But how can a family cycle to the leisure centre today? The answer is with great difficulty. For families living just to the west of the leisure centre, the obvious route is to take the quiet back streets until you reach Canardo Close. But from this point, there is no way across the golf course into the back of the leisure centre. Now I know there's a path marked on the master plan, but it's certainly not marked in detail, and who knows if you can actually get through to Canardo Close or not. The path is even blocked by a fence. No one in their right mind would cycle with kids along Queen's Road. It's an absolute shocker. I mean, I don't do it as an adult, and I certainly wouldn't do it with kids. For families living to the east, the barrier is William Street. It's very narrow. The sides of the street are always filled with parked cars, and you often get aggressive drivers on this stretch going way too fast for the conditions. It's not a good place for adults to ride, let alone kids. And how do you get across William Street with kids on bikes? There are no wombat crossings, and the sight lines are very poor. So instead of focusing on car parking, the master plan would produce a much better result if the focus was redirected to connectivity with the surrounding residential areas. So how exactly did we get from Canardo Close on the other side of the golf course to the leisure centre? Well, the way to do it was to go back up Canardo Close, because there's a fence blocking you getting into the golf course and going across it, and going down Regatta Road, getting to Queen's Road and turning left. There is a bike lane along the side of Queen's Road, but it's a shocker, and you often get close passes. It's an ugly, ugly place to ride, and I wouldn't even recommend riding through here as an adult. Now, it's a bit of a shocker there with the way the concrete's been laid. That could easily bring a kid unstuck with that lip on the curb there. And we're into this, I don't know what this is, an access road into these apartments or something. And we've got to get across that grassy strip on the right hand side there to get into where the playground's going to be. And well, how are we going to do that exactly? There's no pram ramps or anything along here, and of course there's no path. And we come down the end here, and there's a fenced off compound of some sort, and we're sitting here saying to each other, well, standing here, riding here, what do we do now? And the answer was, well, we'll just have to lift our bikes up over the curb and ride across the grass and see if we can actually get across, or whether we're going to run into another fence or not. So it's not clear where the path is going to go through here. Certainly needs more detail, because there is a tall dirt embankment over there on the left where the golf course is, and not quite sure how that's going to be dealt with. But anyway, we rode across the grass and jumped over another curb and found ourselves in the car park. So it'd be very good to see the details of the path there as to how residents from the western side can actually make it into this new playground. So what do we learn from this? Car parking is not the same as connectivity. How do we get easy access from people who live on the western side across the golf course? How do people who live on the eastern side of William Street easily get across if they've got kids on bikes, etc.? And can we have a bicycle training area for kids in Area 7?